karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. He said that you have the adhikar, you have the right to perform your prescribed work, but you are not entitled for the results. Ego basically means a sense of identity. Who am I? What is the basis of the tolerance? The basis of the tolerance is the understanding that this situation, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant, is temporary. Love of God means loving God, loving those who love God, loving those who are trying to love God, loving those whom God loves. So behind this gross and subtle material bodies is the spirit soul.
A student of science, Gauranga Darshan Das's path to monkhood as a young boy in his 20s is fascinating. From authoring over 30 books to teaching the aspects of spirituality to the young and old, Gauranga Darshan Das is on a mission to take the teachings of the Srimad Bhagavad Geeta to the masses. Tune in as he takes us on a spiritual journey, delving deeper into Sri Krishna and the Srimad Bhagavad Geeta. Welcome to Humans of Bombay, Prabhuji. How are you?
Good.
Good. Hare Krishna.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Very excited to break down certain concepts and popular questions that people have about Krishna. I'll start with the question which is the most interesting to me, is that you studied at the Indian Institute of Sciences and then got into Krishna consciousness, which is science and spirituality. So can you tell me how a science student found his path to spirituality?
First of all, let me express my gratitude to you and your team of Humans of Bombay show for having me on your show.
Thank you.
Thank you. So my response to your answer would be this. I have some exposure to spiritual culture right from my childhood. All glories to my parents who had that affiliation. So we used to live in a temple of Lakshmi Narayan. And our home is very close to that. And as small children, we used to go there. And my father used to sing this Vedic chants, Bhagavad Geeta, shlokas, and also Venkateswara Suprabhatam. And he was also learning some Vedic chants. So seeing him, there was a lot of inspiration to learn and recite. So there was some exposure to some spiritual culture as children. And we are not so spiritual, but definitely there was some interest, inclination in that direction. And my father, with those spiritual inclinations, he joined me in a school called Balabhanu Vidyalayam. It is in Srikakulam in Andhra. So there we had a mandatory morning program before our classes start. And that morning program had recitation of Bhagavad Geeta shlokas, Vishnu Sahasranam, Lalita Sahasranam, and also Rudram, Namakam, Chamakam, and many such Vedic chants seasonally. So we had that culture. When I came to Indian Institute of Science, it was in 2005. So one day, it was on November 10th, 2005. One of my classmates came to my room and said, "Are you an ISKCON devotee?" I said, "What does that mean?" "There are some ISKCON devotees in your college hostel. They are in the ground floor. So if you like, I would introduce you to them." So they read Bhagavatam, they read Bhagavad Geeta, and they also chant Hare Krishna mantra. So if you like, you can associate with them. I said, "I don't mind." So that day, November 11th, he introduced me to those devotees who are in second year. I was in first year. So eventually, in their company, I started reading Bhagavad Gita slowly and smaller books. And I got this stroke of inspiration that there is something more that I need to explore in my life, apart from a successful career, PhD, and money, wealth, status, etc. I need something more. So I found it more exciting. Eventually, in a couple of years, I ended up in Mumbai, Radha Gopinath Temple. I worked for TCS for a year. I worked for Force Motors for about 9 months. It's a long story. But eventually, I ended up in Radha Gopinath Temple and I accepted monkhood in 2009. So what inspired me from a very successful corporate career and my academic background is that when I went to Radha Gopinath temple, I personally witnessed the simplicity of monk life. So how selflessly they are living and how wise they are. So seeing their wisdom, seeing their satisfaction of heart, so I felt, let me also try living like them.
Yeah.
So I took that bold step. My parents were a bit disappointed. Not a bit, very disappointed. So you invest so much of love and emotions and energy in a boy, son, and he grows up into early 20s and suddenly they say, bye, I'm becoming a monk. So how disappointing it is to the parents. But eventually my parents could accept it and now they're very happy and very proud of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my story in short.
If you were to explain Krishna consciousness to a 5-year-old, the very basics of what is Krishna consciousness and what does Krishna stand for, how would you describe it?
To a 5-year-old?
To a 5-year-old.
Good question. Very exciting question. So, whether a person is a 5-year-old child or a grown-up man or old person, everybody is looking for satisfaction of heart, isn't it? And they derive that satisfaction in loving relationships. Our relationships with people in this world many times have a beginning and probably an ending. And the ending is basically death. You look for love, right? You look for love from your mother, from your father, maybe from your brother or sister or friends. What if you have an opportunity to get love and affection from someone who never forgets you, from someone whom you are eternally connected to, and that someone is Krishna. He is our eternal Father. He is the supreme creator, maintainer, and proprietor, master, and we have an eternal relationship with him. So there is a story of Dhruva. I wrote a book on Dhruva also recently. There is a story of a 5-year-old Dhruva in Srimad Bhagavatam. His mother Suniti was counseling him when he was disappointed. She said, my dear child, my dear son, I am one mother who can give you affection of one mother only. But the Supreme Lord Krishna can give you the affection of millions of mothers put together. Whatever desire you have, please approach him, worship him. Okay. Then the boy became very excited and he worshipped Krishna. He chanted Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and he eventually became a great Krishna conscious devotee by chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya in Vrindavan, right, on the bank of Yamuna river, right. So we celebrate his success story. So this is how a mother explained. I can follow the footsteps of Mother Suniti and explain the same thing to a 5-year-old kid.
So when you establish that relationship with Krishna, I, for example, I'm a devotee. I visit ISKCON as often as I can. How do you approach him, or how do you approach the context of faith when something goes drastically wrong in your life, which is what most people have a question about, right? That why me? Why did this have to happen to me? How do you explain that?
Yes. When something very unpleasant happens in our life, it's generally not a random event. You know the law of karma, right? So karma has multiple meanings, but let me tell you only 2 meanings. Karma is action. Karma also is reaction to an action. When I do some karma, I get some karma. Means when I perform an activity, I get a reaction for that activity, naturally. So when I'm encountering some unpleasant circumstances in my life or some reversals in my life, A mature person understands that I'm encountering these reversals as a result of my own past misdeeds. I must have done something wrong, and now I'm getting the results of what I have done in the past. When I do good work, I get good results. When I do bad work, I get bad results. Today, when I encounter a reversal in my life, it has some background. When I hit a rock as I'm walking on the road, I may immediately bleed. It's instant reaction. Okay, karma, instant karma. But sometimes when I encounter a reversal, the cause of that reversal may not be immediately seen, right? Probably I am getting this reaction to my action which I have done 10 days back, 20 days back, or 1 year back, or 10 years back, or one lifetime back, right? So, but it's not coming to me randomly. So that understanding that law of karma actually helps us reconcile all the unpleasant circumstances in life. Now, you asked, why me? Why I only have to suffer? There are so many people who are not as ethical as me, or who are not following certain moral principles or virtuous principles like me, but still they are happily enjoying. And why am I suffering? So one may have these basic questions, but nothing is happening randomly. So a person who is rejoicing great happiness and great status is actually enjoying result of his own past good activities, right? But currently, if he is not behaving in a moral or ethical manner, he will experience the results of current bad activities in future, right? So the so-called happiness that a person experiences now, while having poor mentality, is not sustainable for a long time. The traces of their past good karma are still continuing, and they're experiencing some happiness, material happiness. But if currently they're taking their position for granted, and if they're not behaving according to moral virtuous principles, definitely in future they will lose that.
Yeah.
Right? So we need to reconcile the life situations. But this understanding that I am experiencing these difficulties in my current situation should not make us irresponsible to address those difficulties. Difficulties are inevitable, right? We can understand that it's a result of my past misdeeds. But should I just experience that suffering and not do anything about it? We don't have to invite suffering into our lives. As much as it is humanly possible, let us try to avoid difficulties, right? So Krishna has given us some money, manpower, intelligence, resources to avoid difficulties. I cannot stop rain, but I can take an umbrella to protect myself from rain. Similarly, sometimes the situation is like that. I cannot avoid difficulties, so I have to experience those unpleasant circumstances. But if I can avoid difficulties, then let me just avoid to the best of my ability by taking support from friends and family and relations, right? So umbrellas are required to protect ourselves from rain. Does it make sense?
Yes, absolutely. In your vast understanding and knowledge about Krishna, is there a particular passage from the Bhagavad Gita that helped you during a difficult time? And if you could narrate that with the meaning for somebody who could draw inspiration from what inspired you.
Good. This question is very much connected to the previous question. I would immediately quote the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 14th shloka, where Krishna says, Matra sparshastu kaunteya sitoshna sukha dukkadaha agamapayilo nityaha tamstitikshasva bharata. Means matra sparshastu kaunteya means when my senses come in contact with sense objects, when I'm interacting with this physical world around me, inevitably I encounter heat and cold, happiness and distress. Heat and cold are experienced on a physical level. Happiness and distress are experienced on a mental level, internal. They're internal, and heat and cold are external. So I need to learn to tolerate. Art of tolerance, Krishna teaches us. Tam stitikshasva bharata. But why? What is the basis of the tolerance? The basis of the tolerance is the understanding that this situation, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant, is temporary. Whether it is happiness or distress, it's temporary. It's a small phase in my life. Right? Agama apayino anityaha means these happy moments come in our life and they go away. And sad moments come in our life and they go away. I will not be eternally sad. I may not be eternally happy. Right? But they just come and go. This material happy moments and distressful moments. So it's like when you are standing on a flowing river and watching the current of the water. Sometimes there's a little high tide and low tide. You can say ripples, right? Sometimes the volume of water will go up and then go down. You just focus on one point. There's little volume of water that's coming up. Will it stay at such a high altitude for a long time? Within a moment, it just goes down, isn't it? Happiness is also like that. Distress is also like that. It's so temporary in this world. So when I'm getting overly affected by happiness and distress in life, I'm not ready for spiritual life. So let me give you one small example. Somebody is traveling on the highway or maybe Mumbai traffic. There's a traffic signal, red signal. He has to stop his car. If there's a green signal, he can move ahead. So red signal stops your car. Green signal takes you ahead. But when someone is traveling in an airplane, will the red signal stop the airplane? Will the green signal have any relevance to the pilot of the airplane? Because they are on a different plane only. Similarly, one who has an understanding that the happiness and material distress in this world are temporary, perishable, and apart from this understanding, he reads the wisdom texts like Bhagavad Geeta, Bhagavata Purana, etc. And when his intelligence is on a spiritual plane, when he's flying in an airplane of spiritual intelligence, the material happiness and material distress are of no relevance for that person.
Yeah.
Right? Of course, we have to deal with it. Definitely. I'm not saying that we should not rejoice a happy moment. Okay. Sometimes there is happiness in life, so we can just enjoy it. We can rejoice it. We can share our success with other friends and we can just celebrate. Not a problem. But our success or the happiness that the success brings should not make us so excited, so elated, so proud, so confident, so overconfident and so arrogant that we demean people and disrespect people. And similarly, there's a sad moment, right? We have to deal with it. But it's not worth entering a zone of disappointment, discouragement, and becoming very depressed or becoming dysfunctional, right? We have to deal with distress without becoming depressed and dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Deal with it. Okay. Similarly, rejoice a happy moment or successful moment, but without becoming very proud, becoming very arrogant, right? So that's why Krishna says, tolerate, learn the art of tolerance. Tolerate happiness and tolerate distress also. Tolerate distress, we understand. What is this tolerating happiness? You have to tolerate happiness also because happiness may make us very proud and arrogant sometimes.
Yeah.
Right? So we should just keep our pride in check. When one is spiritually elevated, when someone has great deep spiritual wisdom, the happiness and distress on a material plane are not of much relevance to them. Right? So one will not become overwhelmed by it. Yes, we have to deal with happiness and distress, although we are spiritually elevated. Just because I read Bhagavad Geeta, that does not mean mosquitoes will not bite me. That does not mean I will not sweat if I stand in sun for a long time. But happiness and distress are there in a monk's life also, in a spiritually elevated sage's life also, and an average person's life also. But when we have that spiritual wisdom with us, we will not get overwhelmed. We will not get unduly affected. We will have the ability or maturity to reconcile it internally, reconcile it philosophically. We have to externally address the situation as far as humanly possible, and we have to internally reconcile the situation philosophically, rationally. That external addressing of the situation while internally reconciling the situation shows how mature we are.
Yeah.
And Gita gives us that maturity.
The context that you just set, the concept that you just spoke about is a lot to do with an anchoring internally and then you deal externally. It's almost like it's a strategy, right? A playbook of sorts. Krishna is known to be the ultimate strategist, especially when it came to the Mahabharata. What is one such concept that could be applied to modern day in terms of a strategic lesson from Krishna that one could apply to today?
Strategic lesson from Krishna. One thing I just shared, internally reconcile the situations and try to externally address them as much as humanly possible. But one more thing that I can say is, we end up in so many problems because of our interactions with other human beings. Because of our poor interactions with other human beings. That makes the statement more complete. So, we should learn the art of communication. Krishna teaches us the art of communication in the 17th chapter of Bhagavad Geeta. He says that anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat swadhyayabhyasanam chaiva vangmayam tapa uchyate. You learn this art of proper communication while you are interacting with others. Anudvegakaram vakyam means don't speak in an agitating way. Don't provoke people. Don't agitate people. If you agitate people, if you provoke people, if you speak in a very unpleasant way, if your speech is very harsh, you are hurting other people, that will come back to us, definitely. And we'll end up in disrupted relationships, dissatisfaction in our connections with other human beings. So, Krishna says that you please learn the art of communication nicely. Speak properly with other people. And when will that, although you asked about strategy, let me just go a little deep into that. Culture of communication is not only a strategy, not necessarily a strategy. It's a genuine expression of heart. Many times, this kind of advice is given, plus, minus, plus. If you have to give a feedback to someone, if you have to give a correction to someone, first appreciate their good work, then give them the feedback, then again conclude with an appreciation. That's good, wonderful strategy. It works, right? It's a wonderful culture of appreciation, a culture of communication. However, my mother many times chastised me, many times scolded me. She never followed this plus minus plus formula. Right? She directly came to the point and she scolded me when I went wrong. Okay? But I never misunderstood her. Even if she is very harsh with me, I never misunderstood her because I'm completely confident that she is my genuine well-wisher. So, let us not just follow a strategy of interacting with people or attaining success, etc. Yes, strategies are good, but that's not the only thing. Let our culture of communication be a natural, spontaneous expression of our inner attitude, inner motive. When I genuinely love another person, I would not like to hurt him with my harsh speech. Isn't it?
Yeah.
So when that love is there, and I speak in such a way that it doesn't hurt the other person, it encourages the other person, then naturally I will have good communication. But even if sometimes if I happen to speak harshly with the person, he will not misunderstand me and we will not have any strain in our relationships because he's convinced that I'm his well-wisher, right? So at heart, let us first cultivate that love and affection for people. Let us cultivate that genuine respect and appreciation for people. Let us genuinely value relationships, right? When that is there, then whether we follow a strategy or not relationships are intact.
Yeah.
So that genuinity, that honesty in interactions is what Krishna teaches us more than strategies. Your strategies are there. And what should be a reason for me to respect the other person? He is disqualified, he has hundreds of shortcomings, he is not qualified in these 100 different ways. But there is one qualification that we can always see. He is a child of God. Right? Everyone has an eternal connection with the Supreme God, with Krishna. Right? So Krishna says in Bhagavad Geeta, Mamaivamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha. Every single human being, whether it is a man or a woman or an Indian or an American or a human being or non-human being, everyone is a child of God. Is that not a sufficient reason for me to respect another living being?
Yeah.
Right? When I genuinely have that respect, when I genuinely value the other person's position as a child of God, naturally my communication with the other person, my interaction with the other person will be very respectful, will be very loving and caring and not demeaning or discouraging. Right? So yes, strategies are important. I would say more than strategy, let's develop a good heart.
Yeah. A lot of what you just said has to do with relationships, right? Whether you cultivate them with your family, friends, or people who you just meet in passing. Krishna is known as the divine lover. How would you interpret his teachings of love and devotion, especially when relationships in this generation are often complicated? How would you translate the meaning of that love within relationships?
I'll quote my guru, His Holiness Radhana Swami. He taught me a very profound definition of love of God. Love of God means loving God, loving those who love God, loving those who are trying to love God, loving those whom God loves. Right? So, Krishna is the supreme lover, as you said. Supreme lover and supreme lovable person also. So, Krishna said in Bhagavad Geeta, Bhoktaram yagna tapasam sarva loka maheshwaram suhrdam sarva bhutanam gnatva mam shanti mruchati. Krishna said in Bhagavad Geeta that I am the supreme enjoyer, I am the supreme proprietor and creator of all planets, and I am also the supreme well-wisher of all living beings. So he loves everyone. When we are practicing spiritual culture, when we are practicing Krishna consciousness and trying to be conscious of Krishna, trying to be lovers of Krishna, trying to develop that love for Krishna, and when we love Krishna, we naturally love those who love Krishna. Right? And we naturally love those who are trying to develop love for Krishna, means practicing to develop love for Krishna, following a spiritual culture to eventually develop love for God. And we also love everyone whom God loves. Who is that person whom God doesn't love? Every single living being is a child of God. Therefore, the Lord loves everybody. If the Lord loves everybody, and if I love the Lord, how can I hate anyone? I cannot hate anyone. I should not hate anyone. And I should make it a practice that I should not develop any grudge or envy or negativity or hatred towards any single living being, if I am genuinely practicing spiritual culture. Right? So because Krishna is the supreme lovable personality, and if I am trying to make a connection with Krishna, then I should also be very careful, diligent and intelligent in my interactions with other human beings and other living beings. Right? So now, as you asked, in the modern day, there are some frictions in relationships. Sometimes relationships may break. So what do? I would say, when we genuinely follow spiritual culture, when we read Bhagavad Geeta, when we try to practice the principles or the lessons that Bhagavad Geeta is teaching us, these great wisdom texts are teaching us, then naturally we try to see the connection between all people and Krishna, all people and the Supreme Lord, Supreme Divine. So when we come to the level of appreciating one's natural, eternal connection with the Lord, we don't disrespect anyone, we don't want to break relationships with anyone. Now, having said that, like technically it's true, or ideally it's true. It's a very idealistic statement, you may say, but how to make it practical? So this is watermelon juice. Okay, fine. Let us talk about milkshake. You had mango shake anytime? Nice. You had lemon shake anytime? Lemon milkshake? Why not? If you can have mango milkshake, why can't we have lemon milkshake? Sorry, I'm asking. You're supposed to ask me.
Can't mix the two.
You can't mix the two. There's a incompatibility. There is a chemistry mismatch, right? Similarly, although one person is nice, he's a child of God, and he's also a child of God, or she's a child of God, she's also a child of God. Sometimes when they come together, there is friction. Lemon is very good. Milk is very good. But when they come together, the combination is very bad. Right? Similarly, he's a child of God, and he is another person, he's also a child of God. When they come together, my God, there is a volcano eruption there. Right? So we can maintain a respectful distance if there is no compatibility in our nature. Some are very fast, some are very slow, some are introverts, some are extroverts, and some like to do things in certain style, and other people have a different value system and different way of functioning. So if I am unable to match with another person's speed or nature or working style, there's nothing wrong in maintaining a respectful distance, so that we continue respecting them from a distance. If coming closer to them is making me disrespectful towards them and disrupting my relationships with them, then better I realize it and then maintain respectful distance and respect them from a distance and keep relationships formally, right, officially, or at least let me not hurt them or envy them, develop negativity towards them. The heaviest thing that one can ever hold is grudge in the heart. So let me not develop any grudge towards anyone on the planet. I may not have great love for another person. I may not have great appreciation for another person. At least let me not have hatred or envy or negativity or grudge. We need to have this much minimum. If you have love, appreciation, affection, that's a different thing. That's very great. But let me not have any negative feelings towards that person. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move on to our next section. It's called AskAMonk. What is the significance of chanting Hare Krishna? Especially for beginners, how does that help in spiritual growth?
When we chant the name of a person whom we want to love, we naturally develop that love for that person. To say the statement in a different way, when I love a person, I naturally think about that person more. I naturally call that person's name, remember that person's name multiple times, right? So I feel like talking to that person more. I feel like interacting with that person more and more. So when I don't have it right now, I need to do it as a practice. So chanting the name of Krishna, chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is the recommended practice for this age to develop that love for Krishna, love for God. So when I continuously chant, at least when I allocate some time in a day, couple of hours in a day, to chant the names of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. When I chant, I am slowly developing that love for Krishna. When I'm chanting more, I am trying to develop more love for Krishna. So when I develop love for Krishna, when I develop love for God, the consequences I have just explained. When I love God, I start loving those who love God. I start loving those who are practicing and trying to love God. And I start loving everyone whom God loves, which is everyone basically, which is every living being. So eventually our aim is to develop that prema, love for God. And based on that love for God, we love everyone. We acknowledge everyone's connection with God, and we understand that we are connected to everyone on the foundation of our connection with Krishna. Right? We may be meeting for the first time. Like many of the members here are meeting for the first time. But actually, we have an eternal relationship. You are connected to God. I am connected to God. So with Him as the center, we are connected to each other on a spiritual plane. Although there are many external differences. So when we chant Hare Krishna, we cultivate love for Krishna, and we acknowledge spiritual equality amongst all people behind the external differences, bodily differences.
This is an explanation, of course, from an evolved monk, right? Now, if somebody were to start their spiritual practice, what would you recommend? There are a lot of people who may not have hours to dedicate. How can one begin their spiritual practice?
Yes. They may not have hours to dedicate, but they have some minutes to dedicate, right? So you can chant with you can begin with one round of chanting. One round means there is a japa mala that we use to chant this Hare Krishna mantra. So that japa mala has 108 beads. So to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra 108 times, it may take 7 minutes or 8 minutes or 6 minutes depending on my speed. So that 6-7 minutes, if you can spare in a day, that's a good beginning. If you can manage to spare 15 minutes, you can chant 2 rounds. If you can manage to spare half an hour, you can chant about 4 rounds. So there is always a beginning. I also began with one round in my college, then 2 rounds, and eventually I came to 16 rounds. So yes, we can take our baby steps.
Any reading material for beginners?
Yeah. I would say Bhagavad Geeta caters to the needs of very spiritually evolved personalities and also beginners.
Which Bhagavad Gita? Because there are many versions, right? Like there are abridged versions, there's translation. Any particular book as a resource that you could recommend?
So Bhagavad Gita is one.
Yeah.
Which is spoken by Krishna.
Of course. Yeah.
And that is explained by different
mediums.
Different writers, different authors in different ways. So we read this version of Bhagavad Gita as presented by our ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada.
In your Bhagavad Gita series, you also mentioned something that's that in everyday real life could be hard to kind of demonstrate, which is work without expecting results. We live in a very result-oriented society, right? Whether you're at work or you're in school or college, results, that report card, what it holds, the number is what matters. What is the practical advice on working hard without being result-oriented in this context?
Now, Krishna doesn't literally say don't work in a result-oriented way. The exact Sanskrit is karmanyevadhikaraste mafaleshu kadachana. He said that you have the adhikar, you have the right to perform your prescribed work, but you are not entitled for the results. So, but you can aspire for the results. For example, a student works very hard to become successful in the exam. So, preparation is in the student's hands. Question paper is not in the student's hands unless it leaks, right? But generally speaking, question paper is not in our hands. So, he sincerely prepares for the exam and whatever question paper comes, he tries to write, right, to the best of one's ability, right? So whatever score comes, he has to accept it. So when there is a sincerity in preparation, one is satisfied with the result. You have to work for results, but you should not be discouraged or demotivated when the result is not so attention attracting to this world, right? So I give kids classes. Once I asked the kids, if you get 95% in your exam, will you be happy? The kid said, yes, we'll be happy. Then I asked the next question. If you are the only person who got 95%, If all the other children in your class got 96%, 97%, 98%, 99 and 100%, will you be happy? Not sure. Then ask the next question. If you get 60% in your exam, will you be happy? Then they said, okay. Then I asked, if you're the only person who got 60%, and if all others got 59, 58, 45, 33, 22, and you're the first ranker, will you be happy? Of course we'll be happy. So now somehow the societal expectations overwhelm us so much that we always find for relative happiness more than absolute happiness. Absolute happiness means I put an honest effort and I get this result. Let me be happy with it. Relative happiness is, yes, I got this result. How superior is this result in comparison to the results obtained by other person? And how inferior is this result in comparison to the results obtained by other people? So we measure our success in accordance with this principle. Unfortunately, the world has become a world of competition, many places, right? But if we can just read the Bhagavad Geeta and develop this understanding that yes, I have to work hard to attain results. Krishna doesn't say you should not work in a result-oriented way. You have to work for results. But once you put your sincere effort, whatever result comes, you just accept it.
Yeah.
Right? So success is in sincerely attempting with all integrity, without cutting any corners, right? And even if you fail, we learn lesson from that failure and we move on. And that failure is also success when we learn a lesson from it. And success is also a failure when we become arrogant, when we become proud, when we are not grateful to people who helped us in success, right? So now I would often say that we are tested for two things in life. Number one, when we become successful. Number two, when we fail. Okay. When we become successful, we are tested for our humility. We are tested for our humility in success. And we are tested for our consistency in failures. When I encounter a failure, am I consistent enough to continue my effort to attain success? If so, I am successful. Although I am a failure. But when I become successful and that success is making me arrogant and proud and overconfident and I'm disrespecting people, demeaning people and looking down upon people who are not as successful as me, that success is actually failure. Right? So Krishna, to give it short, to summarize, Krishna says you sincerely do your work. Don't be attached to getting this kind of result only. Whatever result comes, just accept it and be detached. Right? You're not the cause of results. But you have the responsibility to work in that direction.
I have a last question. It's been very enlightening, but a question that I think will help people with a very significant gap, which is, what advice would you give people who are struggling to find meaning or purpose in their life?
Purpose is twofold. One is the immediate purpose. Second is the ultimate purpose. Right? Immediate purpose is for our self-preservation. Ultimate purpose is self-realization. So how do we do justice to our pursuits for both immediate success and ultimate success, or self-preservation and self-realization? When we have self-awareness. So self-preservation, in this term, that self is body, right? So as long as I'm living in this body, I need to work for the maintenance of this body. I need to earn my livelihood. I need to work hard to get some money and maintain my life and maintain the family, right? So that is self-preservation. And self-preservation is the immediate duty, immediate need, immediate purpose of everyone. No doubt about it. But am I supposed to just work hard for my livelihood whole life? Is that the only purpose of my life? Should I just work hard, get money, and then eat food, sleep, and then next day morning again go work hard and get money and maintain myself? Is that the only purpose of my life? So we need to question ourselves. Who am I? So, am I this body? This is my hand. This is hand and this is my hand, but I am not this hand. This is my head and I am not head. This is leg and it is my leg, I am not the leg. So it is my body, my hand, my leg, my head, my eyes. Means who is that I? Right? Okay, this is gross body. I just spoke about the gross body and I am not the gross body. This gross body belongs to me. And behind this gross body is a subtle body. And that subtle body has mind, intelligence and ego. Oftentimes people may not be able to differentiate between what is mind, what is intelligence, what is ego. They say ego is born out of mind, or mind is born out of ego, or intelligence and mind are same. They may have a lot of confusion. Basically, mind is that faculty within us that stores all desires, thoughts, emotions, feelings. But the mind does not have the ability to analyze. Intelligence is that faculty within us that analyzes whether the mind's thoughts are good or bad, beneficial or non-beneficial, or destructive or constructive, useful or useless. Right? Intelligence does the discrimination part. Then comes the ego. Ego is oftentimes seen or perceived in a negative sense only. But ego basically means a sense of identity. Who am I? A sense of identity. So I may be a teacher or a student or a doctor or an employee or employee of a company or a plumber or a carpenter or a builder. So these are all different identities, right? And everyone should have some identity in the society for smooth function. However, that is not the only identity. Today's student can become tomorrow's teacher. Today's Mistri who works for the construction of a building can tomorrow become an architect, right? Today's lawyer can become a judge tomorrow. Today's doctor can become a patient tomorrow, right? So these roles keep changing. We need to have a sense of identity, but they're changing identities. Now, when we overly identify ourselves with those designations, temporary designations, what happens is that leads to a sense of pride and arrogance. And that is the ego that people commonly refer to. Ego is basically a sense of identity, but that sense of identity can create some superiority complex or inferiority complex, pride or envy. And that is seen as ego, which is correct, of course. It's a fairly good understanding. But I would say more precisely that is called false ego. You have a sense of identity. When you overly identify yourself with a position or a designation or a role and become proud or envious, that is called false ego. That's a symptom of false ego. But apart from that, there is a true ego. There is a real ego. There is a real sense of identity. What is my real identity? My real identity is I am a child of God. This is called self-awareness. I talked about gross body, which is visible, which has visible limbs of hands and legs and eyes, etc. And behind this gross body is a subtle body that has mind, intelligence, and ego. All three are material. They are not visible to the eyes, but they exist, right? So behind this gross and subtle material bodies is the spirit soul. And that spirit soul is a child of God. Krishna says in Bhagavad Geeta, Mamaivamsho jiva loke jiva bhutas sanatanaha. All jivas, all living beings are my amshas. They are my children, right? So that is our original identity, and that is called self-awareness. I spoke about 3 terms in the beginning of the answer. Self-preservation, self-awareness, and self-realization. So self-preservation is the immediate purpose, that is bodily maintenance. And self-realization is the ultimate purpose. When I realize myself as a child of God, when I realize my eternal connection with God, what is my role as a God's servant, as a God's child? right? So that question we need to ask, that is self-realization, that is the ultimate purpose, right? And what connects this self-preservation and self-realization, what connects this immediate purpose and ultimate purpose is that self-awareness. And that self-awareness comes by sincerely reading wisdom text and associating with wise people, right? Reading, for me, it's reading Bhagavad Geeta and associating with other devotees in my ISKCON community, right? So we need to work for our immediate purpose, no doubt about it. And we should also endeavor to fulfill our ultimate purpose of self-realization. Does it answer your question?
Yes.
On purpose?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much. It has been lovely. I think broke down a lot of concepts, and it'll help a lot of people. Help me. So thank you so much. And
Thank
Hare
you
Krishna.
so much. Hare Krishna. Very happy and very grateful. And it's my honor and privilege to have this conversation with you, Karishma ji. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for being the best community, and we'll see you in the next one.